The wealthy don't work that way. I'm not going to say necessarily that they have more fear, because the way they invest gives them less fear. And that is their focus on safety first.
Welcome to the Build to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. And we believe that the key to scaling and compounding your wealth starts every single day with the mindset and practice of stewardship over ownership and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal is to help you scale and compound your wealth in life so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. I'm your host today, Brett Swarts, and you have an episode we're joined by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires. They share their secrets and wisdom with us so we can level up, scale, and make a bigger impact. I'm excited about our next guest. He's out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. He is one of the founders and creators of Hilton Wealth. And he's got an amazing track record and background of knowledge, because he has served and helped to run the Hilton Family Office. In fact, he's the president and CEO of Family Office Manager of Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors, and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Mr. Mark Miller. Mark, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Good to see you today, Brett.
Absolutely. Nice to connect with you here. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, could you give us just a little bit more about your story and then your current focus?
Sure. Well, I've been in the business financial planning industry for, over 40 years now. And I started off as a lot of young people doing the business, going to work for a brokerage firm and letting them make all the money and on the sweat of my brow, and got a little smart. I was fortunate to get a very, very wealthy client that started to introduce me to some of his friends that did things a lot differently than the way they did things at the brokerage house. And basically I got to learn, meet more wealthy people. And just over time, I started to get on the smart money side of the business. And I talk about this in my book, Hilton Wealth, where I started to meet people and understand how they invest compared to how kind of the average retail investor invests. And really ever since, and in the process, we made relationships with the Hilton family a number of years ago, and they asked me to become the manager of the Hilton Family Office, which is what's called a virtual family office, and we can go into some details on that if you want, but we're spending a lot of time right now because Brad Hilton's passion and I's passion. Brad is the grandson of Conrad Hilton, and our passion was to how can we bring these kind of advanced strategies more down the main street, because there's no structures to do this. And over the last about 2.5 years, we've really taken off, and we figured out just put a lot of creativity into it, how we can teach people how to truly invest like the wealthy do, and not just some of these books that you pick up in the bookstore or on Amazon or whatever, that makes it look like, hey, this, if you do this, you're going to exactly invest how they invest. Well, there's so many nuances and so many things they have access to that the normal retail investor doesn't have access to. And then, of course, attached to that is also a big aspect of it is helping people save a ton of money on their taxes, which really is the thing that makes the wealthy the wealthiest. And
Awesome.
people don't really understand that, but that's really,
Yes.
truly what makes them wealthy.
Yeah, we call it tax flow, not just cash flow, right? And figuring out ways to optimize your tax efficiency on exits and on income and on all of the things. Before we dive into some of those tactical things, I do want to take one other step back, Mark. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So going back in the day, like who was, and as far as Mark growing up, like what was like the one or two strengths that you maybe always just had, or gifts, and how do you use those gifts to bless the people you serve today?
Oh, that's a great question. I would probably say my communication ability and also I work great in this space because I have a real good ability to kind of bring these more advanced concepts more down to Main Street and just speak more plain English. And people that haven't been around Wall Street a lot and been around in a lot of boardrooms or in rooms with a whole bunch of family office members that are talking a lot of lingo. So I think that's been probably my biggest strength throughout my entire career. to be able to have
It's a
success.
great strength. Make the complex simple, and also bringing what is advanced and really great to the Main Street business and investor and owner. So I think that's awesome. Okay, great. With that in mind, let's dive into it's your book, but also just the topic at hand, which is how to invest like an American dynasty. So,
Mhm.
Mr. Mark Million, what is the number one secret to doing just that?
The number one secret I would tell everybody is that on the retail side, most retail investors focus on returns. And it's understandable. There's two things that really drive investing, and that's greed and fear. It's really, when you think about it, what drives all of life, but especially around money because people are so passionate and nuts about their money. And I think of the retail side is more driven by returns than people think. Uh, Otherwise, they wouldn't be selling mutual funds, which is still the number one seller out there on the retail side, showing you the 1, 3, 5, 10 year performance. And let me just show you this performance, and you decide what mutual fund you're going to go with. Okay. The wealthy don't work that way. I'm not going to say necessarily that they have more fear, because the way they invest gives them less fear. And that is their focus on safety first. Because especially in the wealthy spaces and what we call smart money in the book, and Hilton Wealth, is those people are kind of in the mindset of, hey, the safety is just going to be there. Excuse me, the returns are just going to be there. So I've got to think about safety. I've got enough at my disposal that I can make, 10, 12, 15% per year with lots of offerings. I saw that Larry Fink just came out today, and he said, oh, of course, more of retail, talking to retail investors. I think it's a good idea to put some more of your money in kind of private equity and alternatives, which is more the smart money side, right? Well, the money folks have been doing that for, decades and decades, if not centuries. So they know they can make a tremendous amount of money there, so they can afford to take 40, 50, 60% of their money and put it in very, very safe, secure things, and allow the rest to just roll. And I mean, in some cases, up to 80% of it very safe, depending on how much money they have, and just deploy 20% of it and be able to still make
Got
10
it.
plus percent
So it
per
sounds like
year.
the number one secret is, thinking like an American dynasty would be focusing on safety first, rather than focusing on the returns,
Yes.
and then second, leaning more towards private equity rather than the traditional Wall Street. Is that a fair summary so far?
Absolutely. I would say that's the case. Now, the great news is, though, is like it comes down to access, though, because you still need to have access to really quality offerings. Like, obviously, the Hiltons over the years have gotten to know so many people, and I have too, that we know the best of the best in almost every asset area that you can imagine. So we know the people we can go to, that we can, even on some of those safe sides, get 6, 7% per year with almost zero downside risk, because it's all backed up by substantial assets and things like that. You can't do that on the real estate, on the retail side. It's just not possible. Now, you can get some returns, don't get me wrong, but you can't get high yields with almost virtually no risk.
Got it. Okay. So number two is secret is access to quality offerings that
Mhm.
have consistent durable returns, 6 to 7% with almost zero downside risk. And then also maybe access to the deals that obviously you're going to do larger, but making sure those allocations are appropriate on that, maybe 70/30, maybe 50/50, maybe 60/40, depending on, of course, your net worth, your risk tolerance, all those different things. Let's assume the listener who's listening right now is the millionaire, or even, we're 10 or $100 million, right? And they're scaling
Yep.
from millions to billions. So, what would be the next secret in that context to thinking like or building an American dynasty?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, I've just honestly had, and sometimes this is tough. I'm just going to tell you, it's hard. Just had a very, very long conversation with a gentleman today we're bringing on board. He scaled from 10 million to 25 million very quickly because he sold his company, and he's still stuck because he's been investing for 40 years in the retail side. and a retail mindset and is still stuck in that mindset. What has to happen is really when you get to certain levels, I say about 10 to 12 million, in the 10 to 12 million range, you have to start thinking more holistically. You have to start thinking about legacy, dynasty, because if you have any amount of years left, if you have, and of course, we're all living longer now, let's say that happens when you're 55, 60 years old, you have a ton of years left. And that can be, if it's done properly, can turn into a dynasty. And that's one of the things that we teach people how to do when we're at their level. Now, we work with people at lower level too. That's one of the things, and one of the passions we have is to teach people that have $1 million or whatever to scale from there. But we have a lot of people in this area that don't understand you have to transition, because when you start getting that amount of money, there becomes a lot more complexity than you think. People think, oh, if I just get a bunch of cash, hey, I'm home free. It brings in its own set of challenges that you have to take care of. Then you start talking about deep estate planning, trust planning, liability planning, because the more money you have, the bigger target you become. And most people don't know this. And that's what I was trying to explain to him today, but it was tough. And it is, we try to kind of get people over this hump with Hilton Wealth, with the Hilton Wealth book. But sometimes it's a short book. We do it on purpose because people don't read long books anymore. But sometimes they just don't fully get it, so they keep asking retail questions, like he kept saying, well, tell me just what I can do with $1 million. Okay, tell me how I can invest this $1 million. Okay, give me one great investment. Okay, well, that's a retail mindset. I said, well, no, we can talk to you about the Hilton True Wealth portfolios. That our entire portfolio is designed to take a portfolio of your size and decrease the fees, decrease the risk, decrease the volatility, and increase the returns. And we can design and build a portfolio for you, but we don't sell like an individual asset generally. Okay. So it's just a different mindset. It's just a
Yeah.
total different
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah. I'm getting a different mindset. By the way, if you want to learn more about Mr. Mark Miller, you can go to hiltonwealth.com, hiltonwealth.com. You can check out his book, Hilton Wealth, How to Invest Like an American Dynasty. So keeping on this topic here. So what other ones that are like, maybe the ones that are a little more surprising or
Mhm.
not as like, oh, not as intuitive, that you would say that really stick out when it comes to building an American dynasty?
Yeah. Well, if you're not doing the proper things when you have more money, staying on that, let's say somebody's scaling at that larger amount of money, is you have the potential to make even larger mistakes. The same kind of mistakes you may have experienced in your early years that you had to learn about, and by making those mistakes to start accumulating something. And mistakes are part of the game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but if you don't adjust and design a very synergistic portfolio as you gain more and more, then the mistakes compound and become larger. One of the surprising things too is about people don't understand the concept of a proper team helping you. Okay. And here's the analogy I would make. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, okay, that just won the Super Bowl. They had a good solid team, and they were all working together on that team for the same goal. Most people, especially on the retail side, have all these advisors, and they're giving them advice, and they're never talking to each other because they don't want to talk to each other. They're scared to talk to each other because they're afraid, if I say something wrong to this person, I'm going to lose their business over here. So they're scared to death of it. Well, that's one of the things that Brad and I are passionate about, is teaching people, even if you have a smaller amount of money, that you still should have a team that's all talking to each other. That's the family office concept. And that will save you millions and millions of dollars over the years and put more of that money into your estate for you.
Yeah, I think that's key, right? Building the dream team, right? And making sure you have each of the specialists and Navy SEALs for that particular area of the asset protection, of the capital gains tax exit planning, of the estate planning, of the cash flow, of the real estate, of the traditional securities, of the insurance. And when you have that dream team and you can get them all talking to each other, that is what basically a family office is, right? And
Mhm.
they're all serving with this focus. So I'm curious on, we've been exploring this thing called truly passive income, right? And we
Mhm.
have a saying around here that truly passive income is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money.
Mm.
And this idea
Right.
that a lot of people are chasing this financial freedom number, but maybe taking it a step deeper. I'm curious what you think about that, Mark. Like really chasing the a durable cash flow. Where when I define this as no shoes, no shirt, no problem. You're Kenny
Yeah.
Chesney sitting on the beach, Mark. You got your cowboy hat, you got your glasses, you can play your guitar, right? And you know that durably this cash flow is going to show up without any of your time, your energy, or your stress. You have
Mhm.
certainty of conviction in the team and the execution of the business plan, of the investment plan, and it's showing up. But too often people get diluted results because they have diluted focus, right? And they're saying,
Mhm.
I need 5 or 6 or 7 different income streams, and they never go really very
Right.
deep on those, right? And they're not diving in. And so, walk us through how you help people build what's called truly passive income plans, or what do you think about that?
Well, you know what's funny about this is because I've invested in practically everything in my life. You name it, I've invested in and done it. The highest of risk assets, the lowest of risk assets, and everything in between. And what I really found as I've gotten older, and especially since I see the wealthiest of the wealthy, okay, is that if you design a very, very a low volatility portfolio that grows well over time, often it's going to match kind of these, passive income sources, which real estate's the number one. I want to invest in real estate, and real estate's going to throw off all this cash flow, and I'm going to have passive income and all of that. But with that comes a lot of work and a lot of asset picking, and whether it's a residential or commercial, you got to find the buildings, you got to find the managers if you're not managing it yourself. And of course, real estate is a different animal than commercial, but time and time again, we can show people portfolio and they say, well, what's your goal? What is your cash flow goal? Oh, well, I want to make 10% per year on that. Okay. You can design a portfolio that would not only do 10% per year, but we could design it and structure to where it would throw off tax-free income for the rest of your life. Okay. I mean, is that what you're after? Oh, well, I didn't know I could do that. And again, if you have access on the smart money side, smart money people do that all day long. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have some real estate holdings, but they may go let other people invest in those holdings. Let them that are a lot better than they are at it go do those things, and then give them maybe a 20% return per year. And it just adds to their portfolio, and they're still invested there. They still have exposure, but it's completely passive.
Absolutely love it. By the way,
Yeah.
speaking of that, I think people get caught in what's called the 1031 trap. And this
Yeah.
is what we refer to, right? It's, and it's this idea, I think it's this myth of I just need to swap until I drop, get the stepped up basis. And that's my estate plan.
Yeah.
That's my tax plan. That's my wealth plan. I just keep 1031 and keep 1031ing. But then guess what? The market, like in '08, you get a big hit. Even just last 2 years, people are losing their real estate because they overpaid for properties because they don't have a debt flow, tax flow, and cash flow mindset. They're really just focused on, let me just defer this capital gains tax. Let me rush with my hair on fire and 45 days to identify and 180 days to close, equal or greater value, like kind replacement, same asset class. And the worst part about it is they wouldn't have bought the property if it wasn't for the tax. They
Yes.
wouldn't have bought the property. And so they're selling high, buying higher 180 days later. And so I'm curious, what's your biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange and everything you're talking about?
Well, here's the thing, the 1031 exchange, it's all about taxes, right? Okay. Well, we can take care of taxes on the front end when you're paying taxes, and on the back end when you have to pay taxes. For instance, exit strategies that you were mentioning earlier. So if you're running with the smart money, you're not paying taxes anyway.
So let's walk through
You
that. So
understand what I'm
let's do an
saying?
example.
So
We just
yeah,
did a large exit out of Massachusetts, $8 million business sale. We helped structure a capital gains tax exit plan. We'll talk about what we did and maybe your feedback on that in a minute. But
mhm,
I'm curious. So someone has a business, it's zero basis, Mark. It's 8 million, and they come knock, and they're like, "Hey, Hilton, what are you guys doing?" Right? And I want to be truly passive. They're not wanting to. And by the way, business doesn't qualify for a 1031 anymore anyway. So they're
right,
selling this
right,
business. They're going to be crushed about 35% of the proceeds or so with state, federal, maybe some depreciation recapture ish,
yeah.
right? So, what would you say, Mark, if they go, I want to be truly passive and I obviously want to maximize the tax deferral and or efficiency here to not get crushed with millions of tax?
Yeah. Again, keep it simple. Okay. Is that maybe do an installment sale, and what you're not taking care of in the taxes, then we can do tax planning on the front end every year that comes up. Do different advanced tax mitigation strategies that ultimately put money back into your pocket, plus save you on the taxes. We can do it that way. It depends on the size of the business. Sometimes we can just do direct tax mitigation strategies, some of our very advanced strategies to take care of all the taxes anyway, and don't even have to do any kind of installment sale, or any other kind of structured strategies like that when you sell the actual property, or involve trusts or something along those lines.
Okay, so I'll talk to you about mine, right? And this is
Yeah,
a
sure.
little
Yeah,
bit,
go
a little
ahead.
bit. I'm just kind of curious on your feedback on this. So,
Yeah,
started out at Marcus and Millichap, helping people buy and sell multifamily properties, right? So we were
right.
large investment real estate. 1031s was like the banging the drum, and it was good until it wasn't in '08 and the crash, right? And so then we looked back and said these people lost half or all of their wealth because they overpaid. What was the problem? Well, the
I hate
1031
to
was a
see
part of the
that. I
problem,
have
right?
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we said, okay, maybe there's a better way. And so maybe like you, I met a really smart tax attorney, CPA, former Arthur Anderson guy. He always says before the Enron days. Anyways, he taught me a trust with an installment sale combined,
Hmm.
right? And so it's known as a deferred sales trust. And so I started to study it and practice it. Fast forward, I'm a trustee. This is what I do now. We help people design and build capital gains tax exit plans. And so this trust, you can sell it to in exchange for a promissory note. So the same thing you do on an installment sale.
Hmm.
Second, the trust sells it to the ultimate buyer. It's all simultaneous close. So the buyer gets what he bargained for. But the neat part about it is you have none of the downsides of the traditional installment sale, which means your collateral is secured against the old asset, which the worst thing for a business owner after they sold after a couple of years is having to foreclose and take the business back and rebuild it from the guy who didn't work out. Second, you can diversify into any asset of any kind. So you can go into stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You can dollar cost average. You can go back into real estate, start a business. It's very flexible for the entrepreneur, but it's also flexible for the person who wants to retire. Now, it does involve a third party unrelated trustee. That's our role, right? We're kind of like a third party qualified intermediary or 1031 exchange accommodator. And we serve in that role. But the neat part is not only can we defer the capital gains tax, diversify the wealth, but get
Right.
flexibility with timing, right? You can go into private debt, private equity, whatever. And the last piece is we have another version that eliminates the estate tax. Because the other piece that people miss is that 28 million is on the highest it's been in a long time. In 2026, it's we'll see if the administration continues to extend that or not. It's like it might drop to 14 million married and then like 7 million single. And so you're
Hmm.
looking at this death tax that doesn't get solved from a stepped up basis. But for our scenario, we can eliminate the death tax without any insurance, without any charity, without any gifting exemption required. So I'm going to pause there. A, have you heard of the deferred sales trust? B, what are your thoughts when you hear something like that?
No, I think it's great. And we've done versions of kind of what you're talking about. All of that's great. And, there's some complexities, but people need to understand that when you're talking about saving this much on time, helping it build your wealth like that, there is going to be some complexities. But I see nothing wrong with what you're doing at all. Now, the first place I might have gone with, and then you kind of said something at the end there, is that the utilization of life insurance or life insurance trust, to kind of take care of that estate burden, which you can use, but there's other strategies, like you had mentioned, that you don't even have to use the insurance in it too.
Yeah, we like to solve the problem at the root, right? But at
Hmm.
the same time, you can use the trust to fund a life insurance policy, right?
Yeah.
So this is a good example. We just did another $5 million exit for two clients in Newport Beach. And in fact, they were in the life insurance business for 25 years. So they're very, very familiar with this. So sold, deferred all the taxes, like 40% extra working for them. They're thrilled. And then they partnered with the trust via an LLC, and the LLC bought the life insurance policy, and it has like a death benefit that pays to the members of the LLC. It's a whole thing. So again, some complexity, but we've been doing it for so long. It's like a 30-year track record, thousands of transactions, and the IRS audits, all that. So it's proven. But I think the biggest pushback people, if they give it to you, Mark, and give it to me, it's like, well, then why isn't everybody doing this, right? And well, why
Yeah.
isn't my CPA tell me about this? And
Yeah.
so when you hear that one, what's your maybe the best way to help people overcome that false belief that just because
Yeah.
everyone doesn't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't work and it's going to be transformational for you and your family?
Well, that's where I go back to. You remember the story I told you earlier about this gentleman I talked to today, is that when you're, I think it's sometimes, I'm just going to tell you frankly, some people just don't get it. And they don't want to get it. They're in a mindset, and they're stuck in a mindset of this kind of I call it the retail mindset. And I've been in both worlds, and I understand the retail mindset. And it's this is what Wall Street has banged into our head for so long. So if anybody sees anything unusual and outside those bounds, they're going to go, whoa, 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 wait. Say, this is too good to be true. I've never seen. How come everybody's not doing this? Okay. Well, the first thing is because everybody doesn't hear about it, because everybody doesn't qualify. Number one, and number two, it's because these are strategies you're not going to find on the internet, right? I have that all the time, especially in Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors, not in the Hilton Family Office, obviously, but at Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors, I have people all the time. We show them kind of advanced concept or a smart money strategy, private equity strategy, and the first thing they do is run to the internet and start, hey, how come I didn't see anything on the internet about this? Okay. Well, because you're not, because this is on the private equity side and the smart money institutional side of the business. And that's what I really talk to people about. And some people, totally get that, and they understand, and they get a little taste of it. Sometimes I tell people, hey, just dip your toe in the water. We're going to show you a little bit. Okay. And then you're going to find out in a year, you're going to go, whoa, these things are available. Oh, I guess it's true that thousands of people have used these on the smart money side. And then they're ready to kind of move ahead. Sometimes it does take that. Other times people they just close their minds and just think there's no possibility these things can happen.
Yeah, we're talking with Mr. Mark Miller, everyone. By the way, you can go to hiltonwealth.com, hiltonwealth.com. He's got the book, How to Invest Like an American Dynasty, Hilton Wealth. Yeah, I could agree with you more, Mark. And it's a battle, because really the bigger thing at play is this 84 to $100 trillion transferring from the baby boomers in the next 15 or so years.
Yeah.
And it's the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet.
Yep.
And especially seeing with Doge this last 60 days or so, just how much fraud, waste, and abuse is going on. And you look at this and you go, how can we help these individuals steward the capital to make a difference for their families, for their communities, rather than going to most in the government that are going to just absolutely not just be inefficient with it. It's literally just waste, fraud, and abuse. Like it's so much worse now that we're seeing. And I can't help but think this is like the reverse Tea Party, Mark, right? And that 250 years ago, America comes around and we fight for the ability to have representation and rights over tax and wealth and all the things. And now
freedom.
Freedom, right? Yeah, freedom. It's literally, and so now 250 years later, perhaps the largest wealth in the history ever accumulated by a single country, and a baby boomers like the generation, and you go, there's 10,000 turning 65 every single day. There's 80 million in the U.S. alone, and then again, 84 to 100 trillion is transferring, and you go, wow, like this next 15 years is for the freedom of America, because if the government gets their hands on this stuff, you can't trust them to do what they should be doing as stewards of the capital. And so I see it as so much bigger, and I imagine you too, but I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, because I just feel like we're put on this earth for a certain time, and everyone who's like in your world, right? We've got to be on the front lines, battling because taxes is the number two expense you're ever going to pay. Number one is what you don't know, right? And so
Well,
like this is just massive. What do you think?
this is so cool that you brought this up because this is kind of one of the reasons why Brad Hilton and I started Hilton Tax and Wealth Advisors is because a good percentage of that huge shift is not going to necessarily go to people that have 10 million, 15, 20 million plus, okay, which is the Hilton family folks, okay, and 100 million and above, that type of thing. Um, and if I can just equate a story about the government, and I pretty much knew this years ago, even when I was still on the retail side, when because I worked in Washington for a few years under Bob Dole and stuff, and I saw it, and I saw what I thought because I knew about money even when I was young, and I was kind of gifted in that area, and it was a travesty to me that. That Congress did not choose for the good of the American people the ability to save and focus on the Roth IRA as opposed to the traditional IRA. Because what the traditional IRA, the reason why they voted on it, and the IRS was very much involved, they saw that there was an opportunity to make a hell of a lot more money down the road. Because it's kind of the old, and I hated to bring this so simply, but it's kind of like if you're a farmer, would you rather pay the tax on the seed or the tax on the crop? Okay. It's that simple. And the reason why it happened that way is because it was better for the government. It was never better for the American people. And so now that 85 trillion, 100 trillion that you're talking about a massive portion of that is in taxable qualified funds that when all of that transfers, the majority of those folks aren't going to have access to what the wealthiest of the wealthiest have. And again, that's where our passion comes in. We want to get all of those people and make sure they're educated to know when that transfers that they pull as much money back into the estate for their heirs that they possibly can. And it all comes around to that because we're having this massive transfer of wealth, the biggest in any generation at all.
Absolutely. No, well said. In fact, 50% of the total net worth in America is tied to what you said in qualified plans, retirement accounts, right? The
Yes.
401ks. The other 50% is high-end primary homes, private equity, which, businesses, and then commercial real estate. And
Yeah.
so those three are 50%, and those are highly appreciated. And a lot of people are feeling trapped by the capital gains tax,
Yep.
and
Yep.
or they haven't watched Yellowstone yet with Kevin Costner, and Beth is saying, you got to sell the farm. If you don't sell the farm, they're gonna kill you. And when they kill you, you're gonna give the death tax, and they're gonna take it anyways, right? And basically, it's your stepped up basis doesn't solve that. It only
Yeah.
solves the
That's
capital
right.
gains tax for your kids, and the death tax is 40% above the exemptions. And so you have to know, A, be aware of that, right? What are you aiming for, and B, what can you do now while you still have time to plan, because these tax strategies and these things do have an expiration date, depending on which one you're using, and you want to be able to, hire the team, become aware, implement the plan. So, Mark, what haven't I asked you so far that about building, basically, I guess, elite wealth teams or American Dynasty that you want to mention that before we go into the lightning round?
Well, the Hilton Wealth book that we just came out with. Again, my first book was about getting to a tax free state over 2 or 3 year period of time, kind of using some of the wealthiest strategies. But one of the things we discuss in the Hilton Wealth book, How to Invest Like an American Dynasty, is we've taken kind of the general Hilton portfolio that's very hard to duplicate. And we put it into more of a more consumer based portfolio, meaning understand we use a bucket concept, which people have seen a lot out there in the retail world. And anyway, we say, hey, there's these different buckets. There's the very safe bucket. There's a bucket that throws off income. There's your traditional managed money, high end managed money in our case bucket, and then there's your private equity alternative bucket. And that's kind of how and there's more emphasis on those first two buckets. So those safer buckets, and then design a plan and a portfolio. We see this all the time. I mean, I see people that come in with these retail portfolios that there's just no rhyme or reason, and they're invested in all these things they found on the internet, and they think they're the greatest private equity things, and they're losing money left and right, and there's just no synergy. Well, the wealthy build really, really good portfolios and rarely lose. I always say this. Do you ever see anybody fall off the Forbes wealthiest people in the world
That's
list?
what I'm aware of.
No, unless they were really stupid and they put all their money in their one company. Okay. But that just doesn't happen because they say the wealthiest get wealthier.
Hmm.
It's because not because they've got the best great in investments in those private equity investments, primarily because if something goes wrong, and it's something invariably will, 60% of their money is sitting there, and their dynasty wealth is already intact.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and that's what the Hiltons have done for years,
Hmm.
and they know that.
It's
So
awesome.
anyway, those type of portfolios again reduce fees. The wealthy pay very little, if no fees at all, in their portfolios.
Mhm.
Increases safety, reduces volatility, and increases returns as much as 3 or 4% per year.
This is
So
fantastic. Mark Miller,
anyway,
everybody, we're going to the lightning round. You ready, Mark?
yes,
All right.
ready.
All right. Know what you know now. If you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget? Make sure you tell yourself to do.
Uh, I wish I would have met some. I wish I would have seeked out and met more wealthy people.
Okay. Awesome. Question number two. What's the number one book you've recommended or gifted most in the past year? And it can be your book too.
In the last year, actually, The Richest Man That Ever Lived was a book about Solomon. A great book, and about just his wisdom. A
Hmm.
lot about money. He talks a lot about money, so that's a
Hmm.
big thing for me. But
Awesome.
just general wisdom about life.
Great. That sounds a great book. Question number three. What are you most curious about right now?
What am I most curious about right now? Well, I would probably say I'm very curious about all the new technologies, blockchain, AI, all the new digital things coming out. We're actually building the Hiltons, and I'm going to be one of the heads of this, building a new technology fund,
Mm.
and I'm learning more and more, and we're meeting just incredible people in different spaces. So that's probably the one main thing that I'm most curious about now, building that technology fund and cutting edge stuff.
Fantastic. Number one way you're using Chat GPT.
Well, I'm not a huge technology guy. I'm just gonna say that. That's why we have all these experts that work with us. Um, we primarily use it to do letter writing, things of that nature. Some of my younger folks want to use it to everything. We just actually one of them just used GPT today in something, and it was a little bit too generic. So we had to drill down a little bit on it. So but
Good.
I would like to learn more,
Cool.
definitely.
Right on. That's awesome. That's great. Number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
Um, Gosh, just treat others like you treat yourself, and just try to be, I think kindness is a big thing that I strive for every day. It's tough sometimes when people are yelling at you, or whatever, but I would just say try to be as kind as you possibly can.
Awesome. And very last quote, Mark, or very last question, Mark, which is kind of the heart of what we're about here at Built to Billions podcast and Capital Gains Tax Solutions, which is practicing a mindset of stewardship over ownership. So,
Mhm.
A, what does that mean to you when you hear that? And what's a way that you practice stewardship every day?
Well, the book of Proverbs is full of just incredible wisdom. I would say, and I am a believer, and I read my Bible every day, and I probably say is just read the manual that God gave us on wisdom, and it just automatically gives you. It's given me a mindset over the years. Is I am a cheerful giver. I love to give. I love to give to causes. I love to be part of causes. And it's put me in a place in my life to where I think I just automatically have much better sense of stewardship and realizes that it's all his to begin with than I, of course, had 25 or 30 years ago when you're young and free and think you will live forever and all that. To me, it's stewardship is just kind of built into my system at least.
Amen and amen. Couldn't agree with you more. And Mark Miller, I want to thank you for being on the show. Man, we covered a lot in about 40 minutes or so here,
Right.
and you gave us a ton of value, a ton of wisdom, lots of action steps to take. And I want to thank you and encourage you to keep using your gifts of communication, the ability to make the complex simple, to help people build, amazing, amazing investment financial plans for their families, for their communities, to make a difference in this world. Keep doing what you're doing. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you mind one last time? What's the best place for them to find you?
HiltonWealth.com, our website's set up. You can order my books right online. We got some good content on there, and we'd be happy to chat with anybody. If you just want to ask some questions or whatever, you're happy to chat with us, and we'd be happy to chat with you and give you some good information.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Thank you also to all the listeners for listening to another episode of the Build to Billions podcast. We're also streaming on Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and YouTube channels as well. We're on this journey with you to scale from millions to billions so we can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. And I'm hoping that today, I'm trusting that today, I have confidence that Mark brought tons of value. So please share this with somebody. Most of all, take action, right? Take action on what he said. Think about a mindset of legacy, of stewardship, of someone with the most advanced family offices think like. And or if you need help with that, reach out to Mark Miller. And of course, if you have a massive capital gains tax coming up and you want to explore options, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Also call Mark and see what he has and compare and contrast what he's got going on over there. Appreciate everyone listening and watching out there. And we'll talk to everyone again real soon. Bye now. We'll be right back.